you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for inviting me to come to this conference. It's already been incredibly emotional to hear your stories and share and put stick-up notes on things with you. That's always a fun thing to do together with people you just met. I was reviewing some of them and noticed that the word trauma comes up in what we still need to do. And I was thinking about accomplishments. It's 2 years since our fire, I guess you can call it. And this is, standing here holding a microphone talking about it is one of my 2-year accomplishments. So I'll pat myself on the back just for kind of having the wherewithal and pulling things together. So you may be wondering why a marine biologist would be at a wildfire conference, and hopefully that will make sense by the time we're done here. You also may be wondering why you have a blue marble, and both of those questions will be answered. My hope is to give you a couple ideas, new ideas perhaps, or remind you of those ideas if they're already familiar to you, and hopefully they will be useful going forward. So when I got here, I sat down at that table over there, and I sat down next to this super nice guy named Jim, who looked kind of familiar. And it turns out 20 years ago, Jim Carlton and I, who is a journalist at the Wall Street Journal, we went to Baja California, Mexico. That was back when newspapers actually spent significant money and sent their reporters kind of on things like sea turtle research projects. So Jim wrote a fascinating and insightful front page article about our work to save sea turtles in Baja. He reminded me that I picked him up from the airport, and as we were driving to the coast, we ran out of gas. And I had to go find some gas in somebody's backyard, put a couple gallons in our 1972 International Travelall, and continue the journey, which ended up being really fun. And we're scheming on how to go back and wrangle more turtles in some part of the world if his boss gets to send them. So good to see you, Jim. Yeah. So I've worked as a marine biologist, and throughout that time, I noticed that when I was near the water, I felt a little bit better. And maybe that's why I became a marine biologist. So as a kid, I stuttered. I was an introvert. I preferred to be in the water because nobody asks you questions underwater. And then you don't have to answer them, and then you don't stutter. And it's better for everybody. So being in the water was my favorite place. And as I pursued my interest in marine biology and sea turtles and conservation, I noticed that other people felt that way. When we're by the water, it calms us. That's where we vacation. That's where maybe we honeymoon. That's where we hold memorials. That's where we play. It's where we celebrate. It's where we get some of our best ideas. And so I became more and more curious about the neuroscience behind this feeling that we refer to as blue mind. So before we dive into Blue Mind and Dear Wild Child, does everybody have a marble? Actually, a better way to ask that question would be, does anybody need a marble? Hold your hand up if you don't have one, and we will get one into your hands magically. Yes. Here we go. So keep your hand up. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky because those of you who have a marble, put it in your hand, but don't put it over your head because then you'll get a second marble. Hold it in your hand, warm it up a little bit, and hold it out in front of you, about at arm's length. Not over your head just yet because that will complicate our marble distribution process. Hold that in front of you. At arm's length, that's what we look like from 1,000,000 miles away. We are small and we are blue, and that is because of the water here on Earth. We're a water-based planet, and NASA is searching for planets like ours, and their acronym for their search is FTW. That doesn't mean for the win, it means follow the water. NASA is searching the universe for planets like ours, looking for water as the first signal. So water is the basis of all life. It's where majority of life lives. So if you hold your marble up like that, it's a little bit more impressive. And you can kind of look at it through, put a light on the other side of it and look at it through. Now bring it close to your eye. Do not touch your eyeball, but get as close as you can and look through it at that light. And it's kind of trippy, actually. It's pretty cool. It's a little bubbly and crackly, and if you turn it, it's kind of like a kaleidoscope, kind of like you've submerged. And in this much water, you would find literally tens of millions of organisms and every known element in the universe dissolved a little bit. So lots of life. So our water, next time you jump in a body of water and swallow a bunch, think of that. How many tens of millions of organisms you may have just consumed. But that's amazing. Our planet is just buzzing with life and water. And so maybe it seems kind of strange to talk so much about water at a fire conference, but that's been the poetry of the last couple of years. And the message I want to share about Blue Mind, and we'll come back to those marbles in a minute, is, I wrote this book because I wanted to read it. And it's a theme that's come up a number of times so far today. You do the work because it wasn't happening and the world needed it. So you moved into that space and you created the organization. You created the network. You created the knowledge. You created the mechanisms. And even at our table, we were talking about some technical needs and thought of a combination of two existing techniques. So, that into that vacuum often moves the solution. So I wanted to read this book about the neuropsychology behind this feeling we get when we're near, in, on, or under water. And I couldn't find the book, so I ended up writing it. And now I'm trying to forget it so that I can read it as if I never read it before. So that's kind of a strange process. But it came out in 2014, and the conversation about water has evolved. And I just want to share with you all, and maybe the people you know, getting back to your water when you feel the stress and the burnout coming on, whatever your water is. So let's take that marble out for a second. And I just want to take 1 minute, and I want to ask you a question, and then I want you to answer the question. What is your water? And what's the first thing you think of? What's the water you love? What is the water that sustains you, but that you long for? And just think a little bit of who introduced you to your water. Who was the guide? Who was the teacher who took you there and taught you about it first? You might have to go back a few years, or maybe your answer to this is more recent. All right, so I want you to take your blue marble and turn to somebody near you and just tell them the 30-second version of that story. Now, I know that may be hard. Sometimes when we get going and telling our water stories, they might go for a half an hour. But try to do the micro or nano version of it. So turn to someone next to you. Just say, hey, and tell them the name of your water, and then let them share that with you. So just take a minute. So over to you for 1 minute. Okay, now make sure you're also listening if you haven't switched roles yet. Okay, so let's start wrapping up our stories. Maybe you've ventured beyond the assigned question and are learning a lot more about each other. So we're just going to cut this a little short. And maybe I'll ask you for some report outs. So if you feel like you need to keep talking, I invite you. I know it's almost cruel to say, tell your water story in 30 seconds and then listen to another one. It's not enough time once you get going. But let's just hear what, don't repeat the story you told, but maybe a few people could share the story they heard. So from this side of the room, did anybody hear a story you'd like to share from your new friend? Anyone? Did anybody talk about water at all? That's probably a good place to start. All right, somebody from over here, and then we'll go to the middle, and then we'll go to that side. Yes? A lot of first kisses by the ocean. There's a chapter about that in my book, that's for sure. There's something about being by the water, and it isn't just the ocean, but that is romantic, and the science of that is actually pretty darn cool, and it's almost cliche, right? But it's true. You can think of all the Hollywood films that have utilized water as a backdrop to romance, and in our own lives, of course. Good one. Ocean. How about another body of water or story? Yep. Right. So oceans, lakes, love, childhood, nostalgia, memories, those fond memories, they're so useful to have those inside of us when we have to, even reimagine those memories. So important. And a lot of that happens in childhood, and particularly late teens, early 20s is when we form our nostalgia tracks. And a lot of times it's for music we loved, or music we heard a lot, but maybe we didn't love it, but still becomes nostalgic. And understanding how nostalgia works is really important for educators and parents, bringing up the next generation. Because I always tell my kids, I hope you're not nostalgic for Angry Birds and Justin Bieber. That's kind of my prayer as a dad as they were going through that age. So creating nostalgia for beautiful places, for special places, for each other, for quality music. Nothing against the Biebs, but okay, another report out on what you heard from this side of the room. Anyone want to share? We've got oceans, lakes, and yes. Excellent. That idea, if I ask, what's your water, people think family. Like it's a water metaphor or symbology or a combination of family around the water and all of those experiences. So that's a great answer to that simple and sort of really kind of personal and provocative question. What's your water? It's the people we love, right? So I am going to... The idea here for this presentation was to talk about water, then talk about fire, and then we're going to talk about water again. So we're going to shift gears to managing all my parts here. In your hands, okay, again, if anybody needs a book, please raise your hand. So everybody has one. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of a Mr. Rogers here. I always wanted to say that, actually, into a microphone. And sit down. This is kind of like story time, circle story time at the library. Right, Pamela? So I want you to take your book, put it on your lap or put it on the table in front of you. And first thing I would like to say is thank you to my daughter, Grace, who's my co-author on this book, and to Drew Beckmeyer, who did the illustrations. It's really, really some fine work. And I wish Grace was here with us today because it's kind of a special moment. This book came out just a few weeks ago, and it's called Dear Wild Child, and it's based on a letter that I wrote to Grace the day after our home burned, our house burned. And she had left for college the day before to start her freshman year at Syracuse, New York. So she's as far away from our home as she could get without leaving the country. And so let's go to page 1, the big white open space. So the title is Dear Wild Child, and it's sort of presented as the opening, the salutation of a letter. Okay. Dear Wild Child. Turn the page. We built your house around you when you were still growing inside your mother, in the shade of ancient redwood trees, by a creek, not far from the ocean. We built your house stout and soulful to protect and raise you to be strong and healthy. Hardwood and stone, heavy truss and steel bolt, knob and switch. We never locked it. We didn't have to. It never really belonged to us. In fact, I never knew where the keys were for 20-something years. I had no idea where the keys were. That's how unlocked the house remained. We filled it with books, guitars, a piano. There's a piano from my great-grandmother. Seashells, feathers, and animals, lots of animals, and memories. You learning to walk, the wide, worn Douglas fir floorboards holding you up, loving voices singing sweet lullabies, the wind singing through the canyon, the trees and the chimney, the fireplace crackling and warming us as we slept, collecting eggs and cooking pancakes at dawn, you growing taller and stronger like a little sapling. In our canyon, you discovered salamanders, swimming holes, fairy houses, buckets full of plums, heart-shaped rocks, crawdads, bright stars, and owl calls. Your home grew brighter and wilder with people, great parties, friends' weddings, holiday gatherings, and sleepovers. Hundreds of visitors, beautiful music, delicious dinners, and rich, deep conversations. I'd hoped this house would be yours someday. Your home in the redwoods by a creek not far from the ocean was as old as you were. It stood strong through droughts, floods, and earthquakes. You were there for it all. Last night, the wildest, most beautiful lightning storm I've ever seen blew across the ocean and through our canyon. The lightning ignited a wildfire. The unstoppable flames roared over the ridges and climbed the tall trees. The fire took back your house. I wish I could have protected it, but I couldn't, and I didn't. All that remains standing is the ledgestone chimney that still sings with the wind through the trees. Your house served its original purpose. You are healthy and strong because of your home. It grew you. You are made of hardwood and stone, bright stars, and the wind's song. You are made of plums, Mill Creek water, and Pacific salmon. You are made of sea salt, piano keys, and mountain lion screams. Your house might be gone, but you will carry your home with you wherever you go. You are my wild child. Love, Dad. That's Grace, obviously. And I want to point out that on the last page of the book, it says want to help, and it directs people to after the fire. So it's our honor to be able to help a little bit through sharing our experience. This was written as a simple letter to try to convince Grace not to come back. She said, I'm coming home. I need to come help. And I said, you just got to college. You've been working so hard to get there. Stay there. We need your help and time, of course. So this is a gift for you. Please pass it on to someone that may need to hear those words or hang on to it. You may know a young person or an older person who that message might help them process, work through the difficulties that come with these experiences. I didn't cry too much right there. That was not bad. So let's go back to the marble, okay? Get your marble out. So along with this message, this Blue Mind message, go back to the water theme. When trauma or crisis comes, when anxiety is all around us, sometimes it feels more like a red marble. I call that red mind. And red mind is useful and important. It's our fight or flight response to things we should run from or fight against. In modern society, it's our always on the go, always overcommitted and overstimulated, too many screens, too much information, and then our response to that is sleep less and double down on the caffeine and keep grinding and churning. That's what we're told. The grind culture, you're probably familiar with it. You may be living it. But red mind is really useful, right? It's really useful to have desires and excitement and to thrive and strive towards goals. But if it's all you have, and especially after you've been through the kinds of experiences that wildfire brings to our lives, you are familiar with that red mind mode. If it's all you have, you will end up in gray mind, which is burnout and breakdown. So while red mind is useful, gray mind is not all that useful, except it is your body and the millions of years of evolution telling you, we're out of here, time out, and you don't get to choose the time out. It's just coming. It's happening. You burn out and you break down and you disconnect, and languish is a word that comes up a lot. That's not a goal. We should not end up there. It may be inevitable in this society, on planet Earth at this moment. But I want to remind you that one of the tools in your wellness toolkit to practice for yourself, to share with your families, and to share with your community and coworkers is this idea of Blue Mind. And I do want to say, while modern science and clinical research is showing that water is good therapy for all of us throughout our lives, this is not a new idea. Every spiritual tradition, every culture, every sacred text and song discusses this in the history of humanity. All over North America, there are wisdom traditions. All over the world, there are traditions about water and its therapeutic benefits. So it's good for our bodies, it's good for our minds, it's good for our hearts, and it's good for our souls. And if we forget that, we're forgetting one of the most important parts of staying well. So that is the Blue Mind message that I want to come back to here. And just kind of leave you with that. So a couple of gifts, a book and a marble. I didn't have enough Blue Mind books, or I would have given you that one too, or all out in my basement. And but you can find it in a lot of places, and you can even find it for free on my website. So can you take that marble out one more time? We've shared 1 million blue marbles around the world as a way to propel the message that we need to take care of our waters and keep them clean for ecological reasons and for economic reasons, but also for emotional reasons, for spiritual reasons. They are the basis of life, but when we hit that wall, that of too much red mind, and we're on the verge of burning out, taking yourself to the water is one of the best things you can do. And as I went back and found what remained after the fire that took our home, our house, there's a creek called Mill Creek that runs right past it. Just a little creek. It's at flood stage, it may be 20 feet wide. Right now, you can jump across it. And all I could think to do was go down to that deep spot right behind the house, take off my clothes, and get in the water. And that's what I ended up doing. So these marbles are just meant for you to put someplace safe, carry with you, maybe put it in your bag, put it in your pocket, but then pass along to someone that you want to say thank you to. And ask them to pass it on as well. Tell them some version of the story. You probably don't need to go through the whole kids' book part of it and maybe make them sad. Don't include that. Just pass on the happy part of the marble and ask them to share it. We've shared 1 million of these marbles as a way of passing on this message. So I'm going to conclude by reading just the last bit. I'm going to sit down again. The last bit of Blue Mind. And it's a bit poignant because I can remember sitting on a couch on the second floor, looking out the window, out the front of the house that stood there. And I had written about 300 pages of nonfiction, science-y, anecdote. I had no idea if anybody would ever read it, but I'd written the book. And I was wrapping it up. And I wrote at the top of the page, all I really want to say is this, ... And then I sat there and I stared at the page and I thought, what do I really want to say? I've just written a lot of words, but what do I really want to say? And so the poignant part of that is that I just remember where I was sitting. And if we were out at the property now, I could point to the air space that I was sitting in, which is just a bizarre thing that some of you may have experienced. And when I went back to the house, where the house was with my younger daughter, Julia, somebody asked her, where was your room? And she didn't miss a beat. She looked up, and she pointed basically at the sky, because her room was on the second floor, kind of overlooking Mill Creek. And she just pointed, and it was just this heartbreaking, fascinating, and beautiful at the same time moment, which I think is part of the fire experience. So, All I really want to say is this, ... Get in the water. Walk along the water. Move across its surface. Get under it. Sit in it. Leap into it. Float on it. Listen to it. Touch the water. Close your eyes and drink a big glass. Fall more deeply in love with water in all its shapes, colors, and forms. Let it heal you and make you a better, stronger version of yourself. You need water, and water needs you now. I wish you water. Thank you.